Today, we'll spend some time looking at creating your SPSS database. Remember, before you analyze your data, you must create the database and spend some time cleaning the data. There are two ways to get your data. First, from a completed questionnaire, that is, by setting up the data file, usually in Excel, then by entering the responses to each item. These responses are also known as the raw data. You can also import the data from a previously created data file. It is important to note that SPSS is compatible with most data file types, such as Excel or Access. To open an existing data file, go to the main menu. Select File, Open, Data. Be sure to select Data and not Output or any other type. You will need to identify where you stored the data, and you'll also need to identify the type of file or the file format. In this case, it is an Excel file stored on the desktop. When you identify the file, be sure to select the specific worksheet in the Excel file, since the Excel file may have multiple sheets. In the previous slide, we spoke about creating the data file from the questionnaire. To create the file, we will begin by opening an Excel spreadsheet. Be sure to number all your questionnaires before you start, as your questionnaire number is the first variable you will enter. In the first row of the Excel sheet, we will put the names of the variables which we create from each question on the questionnaire. On this questionnaire, once we have entered the questionnaire number, we then start with the first three variables using the names of each: gender, age group, and last education level. We then enter the names of each variable thereafter, that is, using the names for each question on the questionnaire. It is important to note that most questions ask for a single response. However, question 5 allows the respondent to select multiple answers, so we call this a multiple response variable. As the researcher, you will decide on the maximum number of responses you will accept for this question. In this case, I decided on 3 responses. Therefore, for question 5 in your data set, you will enter question 5A, question 5B, and question 5C in separate columns using short names. For questions 6 and 7, these are open-ended questions that ask the respondent to enter his or her response on his own, that is, without any assistance or any aid from the researcher. Each variable is entered in a separate column. Starting at row 2, you will begin entering the responses from each questionnaire, that is, beginning with the questionnaire number and then moving from left to right. Remember, SPSS analyzes numerical data, hence the use of codes or numbers in this sheet. So we've created our SPSS file, that is our data file for SPSS, and we're ready to open it. Once we open SPSS, we go to the main menu. We select File, Open, Data. Remember, it's important to select data and not any other type of file. Once we've done that, a dialog box opens and indicates or gives you the option to select the file by name and also to identify where you have stored the file. Be sure to check the box which says Read Variable Names from the first row. In Excel, we enter the names of the variables in the first row. This is different from SPSS. If you observe the spreadsheet, you'll notice that the variable names are in a row by itself, and then the sheet begins numbering each row starting from 1. Click Open to get the file. Once you open the file, you will observe in the upper left-hand corner there is no file name. It actually says Untitled. At this point, you will be required to save your SPSS file under a given name. So we've opened the Excel data file, and now we have our own SPSS spreadsheet. The file name now shows up at the top on the left because we saved the file under the name Online Shopping. Notice the file extension says .sav. When we open an Excel spreadsheet and save it in SPSS, this is the extension that we will see, .sav, for data files. A little later, we'll talk about output files, which will have a different extension, that is .spo. In the bottom left-hand corner, you will notice two tabs, Data View and Variable View. Note that the Data View is highlighted. Data View allows you to see all the data in the spreadsheet, while Variable View allows you to see all the variables you have created and details about them, such as the type of variable, the labels, that is the meaning or the definition of each variable, and the meanings of the codes, which we'll get to a little later. You will notice that your spreadsheet in the variable view presents all your variables with details of each, the variable name, the variable type, the width, that is the number of characters that you'll be able to enter in that space, the label, that is the option to put the definition of each variable, and also an option to list the values and define them for each variable. We've created the Excel file, imported it into SPSS, saved the SPSS file, and now we're in the final stage of preparing the file before we begin analysis. To complete your preparation, we will enter labels and definitions for all variables. To begin, we will select Variable View from the lower left-hand corner of the spreadsheet. For each variable, we select the type. Notice that by default, all variables say numeric. This will happen unless the variable is otherwise defined by the researcher, that is, as a text variable or a string variable. Question 7 would qualify as a possible string variable. However, the rule for quantitative analysis is that we note all worded responses, that is, open-ended responses, and assign a code for each worded response. If we do not do that, SPSS will not be able to perform analyses of these variables, since the application cannot analyze or perform statistical tests on words. For each variable, we will enter the label or the definition of the variable in the column which says label. Then in the values column, we will enter each code, that is the number for each response, and also assign a meaning to each code. Be sure to click Add and OK so you do not lose the variable information. For variables such as question 6, which refers to money spent, you will need to select the number of decimal places. In this case, we will select 2 decimal places. Once you've labeled all the variables, you're ready to clean your data, that is, to inspect and remove all errors from your database. Once you've done that, you're ready to analyze your data. In a few simple steps, you have just created your SPSS database, and now you're ready to analyze. Creating your database is that easy. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and more importantly, do not forget to share this very informative video with your friends.